Welcome to the Bible study. My name is Kent Philpott, program number 16 on the parables of Jesus. We're going to be looking at in Luke chapter 12. Now we got Luke 12. We'd been in Matthew the last couple of weeks. Now we're in Luke 12 and the parable of the rich fool beginning at verse 13 of Luke 12. And then I'm going to follow that up with the passage that follows, which is not a parable at all, because there's not enough material in the parable of the rich fool. So I went on to the next passage, which is very related. I think you'll see. And so I'm going on one that I have not preached yet. So anything could happen. All right. So the parable of the rich fool, Luke chapter 12. I would just say a parable is a comparison. This is like this. It's another way of looking at something, perhaps to simulate some thought. It is probable that Jesus talked in parables, which was common in that day. We don't want to think that Jesus was the only one who talked in parables. Not so. It had been a device, a literary device that had been used for centuries, but it's a comparison. This is like this, and it helped people to remember. I think that's one of the big things. It helps people remember what it was. Okay, the Good Samaritan. I mean, who could forget that? I had heard that parable before I was a Christian. I had heard the word. I didn't know what it meant, of course, but I had heard about it. And, what is it? There's a Good Samaritan group that help people do stuff. Comes from that. But anyway, so a parable is a comparison. Now here we are, starting Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, that was a respectful term, teacher. Jesus was not a teacher in that sense. He had no credential, but he had the credential of being very, very powerful in his presentation. So, legitimate to call him teacher. Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Now, this is a peculiar thing. Tell my brother. Now, the inheritance laws were found in Deuteronomy chapter 21. We find inheritance laws. In Islam, they are very, very excessive and very similar, by the way, to the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. But it was a very complicated thing because this is the way that wealth was passed on. This was necessary to survival. And there were very strict rules regarding it. Now, he says, tell my brother. Now, Jesus has no authority to do such thing. Jesus is not a lawyer. We had last week we had the lawyer who asked the question, how he would inherit eternal life. But this man, he thinks that somehow Jesus is going to have the ability to do this. Jesus would not do that, of course. He would have no standing. He was not a lawyer. He was a teacher. Verse 14, but he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbiter over you?" He wasn't putting him down. With the way that comes out in most English translations, it makes Jesus sound sort of rough. But that's not actually what it is. He's clarifying very quickly to say, I'm sorry, that's not my position. I don't have that kind of authority. Whatever I say, not going to apply, could not be enforced. So essentially, he's saying, yeah, I hear you, but that's not something that I can do. And he said to them, now, notice the plural, them. There is a larger group. You have to always see Jesus with the apostles and a larger group around him. he's talking, some guy comes up, but when he begins to teach, he's got the whole crowd in mind. It's not just a private conversation. He said to them, take care. It's interesting, take care. And be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And my wife Katie and I are just finishing up a book that we haven't got a title yet for, but it has to do with being healthy. How being a follower of Jesus and paying attention to what the Word of God says is very healthy for you. And here we find something that is extremely healthy for us, but which very few of us ever come around to understanding and putting into practice. He says, guard against all covetousness. Covetousness is wanting more, wanting what you've got. I want what you got. I want more. What was a famous saying? Somebody said, somebody very wealthy, how much is enough? Do you have enough? How much is enough? And he said, reply was, just a little bit more. Some of you probably know who said that, but it escapes me right now. But that's true of us. I have found that if I make a little money and I find I got a little bit of money in the bank, what I want is more. I want some more in the bank. I want some more. We always want some more. We think that if we get some more, that will make us happy. That'll be good. We'll be safer. We'll be protected. We just need a little more. We don't realize that there's a process that's going on in us, an emotional, psychological kind of process, that our well-being depends on my having that. I've got to have that. I've got to have this much. I want that. If I get that, I'll be stronger, I'll be safer. And it's a big delusion. It does not work. It is a big delusion. It only just snowballs on us. It never lets us go. He says, one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. What a tremendous lesson to learn, and how healthy that is if we follow that. Who we are is not dependent on what we own. That is not it. Some of the biggest snakes in the grass are the most powerful and wealthiest people. Just by having a lot has nothing to do with who someone is, has nothing to do with their character. Even if they give gobs of it away, as a matter of fact. And he told them a parable. Now, the guy does this, brings this up, he's going to tell them a parable. The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. I don't know what kind of crops. Who knows? Doesn't matter. So where am I going to store them? I mean, this is a greatly exaggerated experience. This is a parable, a true parable. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. I would have just built more. It's a very strange thing. See, these things don't have to make sense. He's telling a story, a parable. And there I will store my grain and my goods. So he's got all this stuff stored. There's a lot of thing about the details of this parable just don't make any sense. If it's corn, wheat, barley, who knows what it might be, if that's sitting around for a while, it's going to go bad. And the rats are going to get it, and the thieves are going to get it. So it doesn't make much sense here about this, but that's beside the point. Now notice it says, store my grain, and my goods. So it's going to be plant material and something else, who knows. And I will say to my soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Now I'm going to go off on one of my pet peeves. Do you talk to your soul? That's an expression, right? I don't talk to my soul. I don't even have a soul. You don't have a soul either. You are a soul. The word in the Greek is suke. We get our word psychology from it. Psychology is the study of human being, the processes that make up the human being. Suke, long history of how this got to be the idea that we have a separate entity that somehow is in us called a soul. No. The word in the Hebrew is nephesh. In the Genesis, it's a human being. We are made a human being. God made us, created us a nephesh. We're a human being. We don't have a soul. We don't have a spirit either. But we talk about, the Greeks would talk about sarke, the body, nous, the mind, pneuma, the spirit, suke, the soul, cardia, the heart. Okay. And they all have like identities. There was just a literary form, way of speaking to various capacities that human beings have. The first English translations would translate the word suke as sometimes ghost or spirit or soul. No. Soul is we have a relationship with God. We are created in His image. There is a spiritual dimension that we have with us, okay? It's there with us. That's what is meant by soul. So he's referring to himself, this individual, in a very interesting way, which would have been popular during that day. They'd say, oh, there's two souls over there. Two people, they're people. You can't, it's a serial thing. How are you going to see souls? That's impossible. So I know a lot of people are disagreeing with me. I've already left the channel. Going someplace else because you don't like my interpretation, because you think, well, you got to take that literally. No, the word is not translated properly. The word means human being. Person themselves. You have ample goods. Eat, drink, and be merry. Okay, eat, drink, and be merry. It's good to have a good time once in a while. Party down, I like to do that. Have a good time with my friends. It's a good thing to do. But that's not all life is. So this guy thinks, I've got it made. Nothing to worry about. He has no consciousness that there's anything other than his little world, that everything is now perfect. But God said to him, fool. The word fool means that an individual is not tuned into reality. They are out of reality. They have gone someplace else. They are no longer firmly present and understanding. God said to him, you don't understand. God didn't say fool. Jesus didn't say fool. Okay? That's our English translation. But it simply meant somebody who wasn't in touch with reality as they should be. You haven't got it. You haven't figured it out. Lacking an understanding. He says, this night your soul is required of you. Oh, okay, well, it's just my soul. Not a big deal. I'll go on. So, you're going to die. Your soul. It's a way of speaking. You are going to die. Your soul is required of you. Your life is going to be required of you. You're suke. You're a suke. You're a living human being. Your life is gone. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? That's going to happen to all of us. The older I get, the plainer it is. It's just a reality that we face. We get older, and sometimes we get wiser. I mentioned last program I was out at San Quentin last night. We do 4 programs in a row. This was the 4th in a row. And the team that came in to play, call themselves, I shouldn't tell you the name of the team, but there was two of them that were older than I am. I'm 76 years old. And there was a guy, 81. He played first base the whole game, and he did wonderfully well, got a couple hits. These guys were old. The youngest one would have been in his mid-60s. So we have a little joke. Well, when do you, this is my little joke I like to tell. When do you stop playing baseball? Well, when they won't let you take your wheelchair out on the field. Then I guess you can't play, unless you can talk them into it. Anyway, we're in the process of dying. And we never know what might happen next day. Somehow this guy didn't understand that just by having all this stuff, he already had enough. He was already doing good. He wanted more and more and more. So now he's just going to settle back, eat, drink, and be merry, not realizing, boom. Now this is a parable. This is not a real event. It's a parable. Jesus getting people to see what is the actual reality. Most of us live our lives without understanding reality. We don't get what's really going on. That there is a God who created us, that we have broken his commands, therefore we cannot live in his presence, but we're going to live forever anyway. That's just it. One place or another, heaven or hell, one place or another. That is the reality of it. And no one wants to face that reality. We don't want to until suddenly God breaks into our life and shows us what it is, and we can't believe it. It's so startling to become a Christian, particularly when you're an adult, and you already have a full frame of what you value and what values and truths you hold to. And all of a sudden, somebody my age or in their 60s or 50s or 40s all of a sudden becomes a Christian. It's like, bam, you got hit by a truck. I mean it. You got hit by a truck, and you got to start all over. And there's an entirely new reality that you finally now see. But you're never going to see it until you get hit by the Holy Spirit. That's just how it works. Then he says, and the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? Well, they're going to be inherited by somebody, but you're not going to carry anything with you. Verse 21, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Jesus has a purpose here. He's dealing with the man who wanted Jesus to see to it that he got his inheritance from his brother. Jesus is trying to tell him, yeah, I can't do that for you. Maybe he would have said, yeah, if I had the status, the authority, I could maybe get into that, but no, not going to happen. He uses this opportunity to show this fellow that there's something far more important. And even if he gets the inheritance, that might be a bad thing. He might be like the guy who had all this extra stuff and just tore his barns down, and now he said, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry. Maybe Jesus had the idea this guy would get this inheritance. He's going to go out, carry on, and maybe that'll be the end. Something bad happened. I don't know. All right, I'm going to move to the very next section called Do Not Be Anxious. This has always been an important passage for me. It starts in Luke. It's right following the parable of the rich fool, called Do Not Be Anxious. This always spoke to me because I'm an anxious person. I've always had to deal with anxiety from when I was a teenager. And it was one of the reasons why moved me into study of psychology. That's why I spent how many years in college studying psychology? About 6. And why I ran a counseling center for 10 years. It's always intrigued me because I realized how devastating anxiety was, how it had impacted my own life. And I still have to deal with anxiety. At least I'm aware of it, and it helps me to be a follower of Jesus, I want to tell you. There's a lot of things I'm not anxious about anymore, but I can get anxious over stupid little things. So this is a serious deal. Let's look at it. Verse 22, and he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, not about your body, what you will put on, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Now, Jesus is not saying, don't plan on taking care of these. See to it. Do your work. You need your food, your clothes, your housing. What else? You need this stuff. Okay, go do it. But you can move into a dangerous area, becoming highly neurotic about it, having those experiences almost near panic where you feel frozen, where you're so overwhelmed by the stuff that's going on that you can't do, that is going wrong, stuff that you're afraid about doing, and you just dote on it all the time, and you don't feel hungry, you can't get good sleep, and you're just preoccupied with it. I know what it is. I know what that is. Jesus said, you don't need to do that. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. You know, all of my anxiety never got me any place. Anyhow, it was just not working. Then he uses a couple of examples. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. I watch the crows in our backyard about every day. They just go about their business. And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his lifespan? In the Greek, that hour is actually cubit. I don't understand what that means much, really. So, by being anxious, are you going to get anything? Is that going to help you? Jesus, you have to admit, no, it's not going to help. Now, it doesn't really help me if somebody says, Philpott, stop being so anxious. You're getting neurotic on us here. Well, that doesn't really help me all that much, except at least it calls my attention to it, and I can start thinking about that. Oh, yeah, all right, I got to calm down here. What am I getting all upset about? I almost said a little phrase that I shouldn't say on television, but anyway, yeah, just knowing that our anxiety isn't going to get us anywhere is a good thing for us to keep in mind. Oh, I'm not going to get this stuff done. I'm going to try. Verse 26. If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow, that neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Now, he doesn't say, O you of no faith. He says, little faith. One of the things that grows, we're talking about growing up into the stature of Christ, is our faith grows. Our faith grows. Because we'll see it in action. We'll see it actually happening. So it's not a question of no faith, it's a question of little faith. And you could always say to yourself, my faith has got to be growing. I got to be growing more in faith. And that's always going to be a true statement. Verse 30, for all the nations of the world seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Now it's interesting. Your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Jesus wants us to think differently about what's important. Now, to seek his kingdom does not mean you run around naked and barefoot not working, and panhandling and begging. This has been so interpreted by some of the people that earned the status of sainthood. I'm thinking of St. Francis and others that were even more extreme and who begged. Now, if all the Christians of the world were out to do that, well, that wouldn't work. They would be dying on the streets, naked and barefoot. Not a pretty sight. He says, seek first the kingdom. Seek first the kingdom. When you become a Christian and you grow up a little bit, you get through some of the early stages where you're working through all kinds of things and confusion and trying to think through what's going on here anyway. When you do that, you realize I am a part of a kingdom. I have a king. It's so healthy. I'm not beholden to anybody in politics, local, national, global. No, I have a king. A lot of people don't like it that Christians have that point of view, but we are just not look at the political process as ultimate. We have a king. We're part of a kingdom. That kingdom is coming. What is the Lord's Prayer? Your kingdom come, thy will be done, and earth as it is in heaven. We have a kingdom. I have a king. That makes a lot of difference. It really makes it much more pleasant to live in America right now. I have a king. I live in a kingdom. Seek first the kingdom. And all these things will be added. I know you need these things. You're going to get them. I got one paragraph. Fear not, little flock. The only time in the scripture Jesus said, fear not, little flock. He's the shepherd. He takes care of the sheep. You see the pictures of Jesus with the sheep? I love those. By the way, that's not image worship. It's praise. For it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. No moth destroys. Wow. No robbers. Wow. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. There it is. What you value, that's where your heart is. And that's why we're simple followers of Jesus. So long.